PC
Yep.
on.
Yep.
All right, now,
Oh, you just took me off Zoom.
all right, now.
Oh, now I'm on.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay,
Now you can go back to where you were.
okay. Can you bring up participants so I can see if somebody wants to speak? There you go.
I'm
Oh,
gonna,
you want to admit Julie?
yeah, okay.
Do we know who said they would be here?
I just text Tom. Tom did tell me earlier he would be here this evening. I don't know.
He was late
I haven't
last night
heard-
'cause he's
well-
on crutches.
I think June did say she wasn't gonna be here tonight. Ben said he wouldn't be here.
I'd say all the reps are up north, but he's here, so no.
Yeah, he said most of them are.
Are they?
Yeah. You had a county meeting tonight, Mike?
Yes, there's a county meeting.
Oh, yeah.
So the delay, folks, is that we need 2 more aldermen present to hold the hearing.
Alderman Jettie, I'm doing both clerk and chairing. Do you want to make the motion to accept authorizing the conveyance of discontinued portions of Old Groton Road?
Yes.
All set?
I don't have.
I am going to call the special meeting of the Board of Aldermen to order on Wednesday, June 23rd, 2021 at 7:05 PM in the Aldermanic Chamber, as well as via Zoom teleconference. And I'm going to take just a moment to just say to the aldermen and anyone else in this chamber that the people of Nashua expect more from us than what happened last night. And I think that they expect more, and as far as decorum, and they deserve more. So I just want to leave that out there. That's it. Okay, the prayer will be offered by City Clerk Susan Lovering, and Alderman Lopez will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To join by Zoom, please refer to the agenda or the website for the meeting link and telephone number. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please indicate, if participating via Zoom, why you are not meeting in person and whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Madam Clerk?
Alderman O'Brien,
I am present and I'm in the chamber.
Alderman Clee, Alderwoman Kelly, Alderman Dowd,
I'm present and in the chamber.
Alderman Karen, Alderman Clemmons, Alderman Lopez,
I'm here, I'm in the chamber.
Alderman Tenza,
Present.
Alderwoman Lou,
Here.
Alderman Jettie,
Here.
Alderman Schmidt, Alderman Laws,
Here.
Alderman Cleaver, Alderman Harriet Gathright, Alderman Wilshire.
I am here.
You have 8 physically in attendance.
Thank you very much. As is customary, also with us this evening is Corporation Counsel Steve Bolton. As is customary, I will turn the meeting over to the Chair of the Infrastructure Committee, Alderman at Large, Mike O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. Before us this evening is a public hearing on R-21-147, authorizing the conveyance of discontinued portions of Old Groton Road. At this particular time, the members of the public will be able to come up and to give us testimony in favor. After the completion of the testimony in favor, I will then ask for testimony in opposition. I will then again ask for those who did not get the opportunity to speak for testimony in favor. I will re-ask the question for that testimony and again, repeat again for testimony in opposition. When people do come forward, please state for the record your name and your address. And then also, there will be a time limit as per our custom of 3 minutes. So therefore, I will open up the hearing and looking for anybody who would like to come forward and discuss testimony in favor. Oh, yes.
Mr. Chair, just a correction, the public hearing is on the petition for street discontinuance of a section of Old
Oh, yes.
Groton Road. It's not
Thank
on
you.
the resolution for the
And
conveyance of that discontinued portion.
Mr. Chairman,
Reading the wrong paper. Thank you, Attorney. Yes, this is for the discontinuance as stated by corporate counsel. So yes, thank you. Is there any testimony in favor?
are you going to have somebody explain?
Somebody to explain it?
We usually give somebody an opportunity to
Alderman
explain.
Jettie, yeah, if not, I can, if you wish.
No, I'd be happy to take a stab at it, but I think Attorney Westgate is on the meeting, who is.
Yeah, no, forgot that. Mr. Westgate, would you like to explain what we're doing here?
I'd be happy to. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you all for giving us the chance to appear tonight. My name's Brad Westgate. I'm a lawyer with Weiner and Bennett, 111 Concord Street in Nashua, represent Edgecombe Properties, the petitioner. I submitted a letter at the end of last week, Mr. Chairman, to the board that summarized the purpose of the petition and the reasons behind it. In a nutshell, it's pretty straightforward. Broughton Road, on the north side of it, Edgecombe Properties obtained planning board approval to develop a 25 single-family unit conservation subdivision, which now is in the process of development, could be in the condominium form of ownership. Hayner Swanson, the project surveyors and engineers, did a lot of research determining the status of Groton Road as part of their typical detailed analysis of any project that they seek approvals for. What they found was that there were two areas of Groton Road that were laid out many, many years ago. One area, which we call discontinuous area A in our petition, is a set of a couple triangles on the north side of Groton Road that was laid out in 1799, if you can believe that. But many years later, in 1937, the state realigned Groton Road. So what you see now for Groton Road as you go out there is what was established by the state in 1937. But these old triangles along the north side in Edgestone's property were never discontinued. So they're not used, they haven't been used for all this time, but they're technically not discontinued streets. In 1847, there was another section of probably of what was intended to be Groton Road. Hayner Swanson found that too, but couldn't plot it, couldn't put it on a plan in effect. So it likely does go through this Terrell Farm project, but it can't be found, if you will. So neither of these sections of what I've called Old Groton Road in our petition are used today. They're not necessary to be used. They serve no purpose. But it's the kind of thing that a developer and a property owner would want, if you are off the books, if you will, out of the record of title, because they're merely a historic encumbrance of no purpose. We've been before the planning board. The planning board gave a favorable recommendation last week to the proposal. As I said, I submitted a letter that summarized the purposes as well. The Corporation Counsel has reviewed the application. She's been very judicious and cooperative with me, came up with good ideas on it. The fundamental conclusion that Corporation Counsel Celia Leonard came to was that the city be granted an easement for two portions of sidewalk that will be on the Terrell Farm property. There's going to be a sidewalk along part of this project, some of which is in the Groton Road right-of-way, a couple pieces of which are not. We agree, because obviously we were going to build that sidewalk anyway. It was a condition of approval from the site plan granted by the planning board, but we certainly understand and agree that we should grant an easement to the city for those portions of the sidewalk on the Terrell Farm piece. Attorney Leonard has revised a memo that she sent to the board that correlates into Resolution 21-147 that Corporation Counsel Bolton just referenced. We're in full agreement with the approach Attorney Leonard has suggested. Don't want to take up any other time, Mr. Chairman of the board. A number of items tonight. Happy to answer any questions. We'll stay on the meeting during your infrastructure committee meeting, Mr. Chairman, if there's questions there. I assume the board will simply address it internally then, but it will stay available if you need any further information from us, and we thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney Westgate. Any comments or questions from members of the board to Attorney Westgate? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, sir. All right, to get back to the business at hand, I will now open up the hearing for the petition of street discontinuance of Old Groton Road with testimony in favor. Is there anybody in attendance in the chamber or on Zoom? If you're on Zoom, please raise your hand. Hopefully I'll be able to see that and you'll be recognized to speak. And again, to remind you, there is a 3-minute limit. So therefore, I'll open up to testimony in favor. Seeing none, I will close the testimony in favor and reopen testimony in opposition. Is there anybody who would like to come forward and offer that testimony in opposition, both in the chamber or on Zoom? Seeing none, I will close the testimony in opposition. I will now reopen testimony in favor, if anybody would like to come forward.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I neglected to just indicate that in the chamber tonight is David Petropoulos, who's treasurer of Edgestone Properties, Tom Zajac, the project engineer, Hannah Swanson, and on Zoom is Jaron Slattery, president of Edgestone Properties. I just wanted the record to know that these gentlemen were in attendance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Westgate. Again, any testimony in favor? Seeing none, I'll close the testimony in favor and then reopen testimony in opposition. And 2-1, we did have a late attendance. Okay. Seeing no hands up. Therefore, I will say there was nobody that wanted to speak in favor or did offer any testimony in opposition. I will now close the public hearing on the petition of street discontinuance of Old Groton Road at 7:17 p.m. I would like to remind the public that immediately following this, we're going to go into the Infrastructure Committee hearing, where this will be brought up again as well as other items. So please stand by. Okay, Alderman Lopez, do you have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, the motion before us is by Alderman Lopez is to adjourn. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Dow,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
You have 8 yeas and 0 nays.
Okay, the meeting is declared adjourned at 7:18 p.m.
So when was my turn to say yes? I stubbed my toe, and I was like, yes, yes, it is fine.
We'll give approximately 1 minute if the folks at home will please stay with us.
Sophia.
And I'm going to go on mute just for a second. Jeff, in the control room, we're ready to start.
Okay, all set.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call the order of the Committee of Infrastructure, this being June 23rd, 2021, at 7:21 p.m. at the Automatic Chamber and via Zoom teleconference. To access Zoom, please refer to the agenda or the city's website for the meeting link. And a roll call will now be taken. And I'm going to do the double duty of both chairman and clerk, so please bear with me. But Alderman Tenza,
Present.
Alderman Jettie,
Here.
Alderman Lopez,
Here.
and Alderman O'Brien, myself, is present. We have 4 members of the committee present. Members not in attendance is Alderman Jan Schmidt, who is excused due to her obligations as a state rep with the county meeting this evening. Also in attendance is Tim Cummings, Economic Development Director. I will now open up the meeting for public comment. Is anybody from the public would like to make a comment? Please, when you speak, give your name and your address, and there will be a time limit as per our custom of 3 minutes. So is there any member of the public or in the chamber that would like to comment, the Committee of Infrastructure? We have Paul Shea. So, Mr. Shea, you are recognized.
Thank you so much, Alderman O'Brien. My name is Paul Shea, and I'm the Executive Director for Great American Downtown here in Nashua. We are Nashua's Main Street program. For folks at home, of course, the Board of Aldermen know intimately all of the good things that we do. One of the things that we often do is get the pulse of business owners and our broader community on various topics. Over the course of the pandemic, we conducted a number of surveys of the public to determine kind of their feeling on how some of the measures that have been taken are working out. And one of those items, we wanted to assess whether or not they might like to see the measures that were taken continue on beyond the pandemic. There are a lot of things that we learned and tried out that we have found worked quite well, and we might like to carry on past this time as we work our way out the other side. And one of the items that we sought public feedback on is the outdoor dining expansion. The outdoor dining expansion has been immeasurably positive for the vast majority of our downtown businesses. I would be, I don't think that I'm overstating this as fact, that there are a number of businesses that would not have survived and continued to thrive without the measures that the Board of Aldermen, the Department of Public Works, Economic Development, and the Mayor's Office undertook in short order. It was very impressive. We asked the public how they felt about this in July of last year after it had been in place for a number of months. We continued the survey through August and garnered over 900 responses altogether. And we found that approximately 82% of respondents were actually in favor of this measure continuing beyond the pandemic. There's been a lot of commentary about the positive impact that this has had for businesses, but also on the general culture and vibe of our downtown. And we see that there are a lot of positives around this.
30 seconds.
Many members of the community feel similarly, and I know that that's up for some discussion tonight. So I just wanted to share that piece of kind of public feedback that we've gathered as you work to discuss and figure out what best next steps are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment? Seeing none, we'll move to a discussion. We're joined, as mentioned earlier, by Director Tim Cummings, Economic Development Director, and he would like to offer a discussion on the continuation of the narrowing of Main Street. So, Mr. Cummings,
Yes,
the
Mr.
floor is
Chairman?
yours.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Alderman Jettie here. I'm sorry, I'm wondering, I don't want to, if I'm out of order, just tell me so, but I'm expecting this discussion to take some time, and I know there are people here and on Zoom that are here about the the Groton, the old Groton Road issue. Would it be appropriate to take that out of order? Sorry, Director Cummings, I know. But so we could, deal with that and they could leave and then we could have more, concentrate on the discussion.
I think your point's well taken. You thought of something I didn't, but I will ask other members of the board. Without objection, Alderman Jettie requests that we take the meeting out of order. And is there any objection? We'll move on with the regular scheduled business and therefore allow probably much more fairly uninhibited time to Director Cummings. So without objection, we will do so. Thank you, Alderman Jettie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Communications. We have communications from Matt Sullivan, Planning Manager. Reason, referral from the Board of Aldermen on proposed R-21-148, authorizing the acquisition of a portion of property at 44 Black Meadow Road, tax map C, Lot 25. Additional correspondence from Matt Sullivan, Planning Manager. Reason, referral from the Board of Aldermen on proposed petition for street layout at 44 Buck Meadow Road. Additional correspondence from Matt Sullivan, Planning Manager. Referral from the Board of Aldermen on proposed R-21-147, authorizing the conveyance of discontinued portion of Old Groton Road. Additional correspondence from Mr. Matt Sullivan, Planning Manager. Referral from the Board of Aldermen on proposed petitions for street discontinuance, Old Groton Road. And additional correspondence from Celia K. Leonard, Deputy Corporate Counsel. Revised deed for R-21-147, authorizing the conveyance of discontinued portions of Old Groton Road and recommendation for sidewalk easement. There being no objection, I will accept the communications and place them on file. Petitions. Before us this evening is a petition for street discontinuance of Old Groton Road. Alderman Jettie, do you have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I move that we accept the petition for street discontinuance of Old Groton Road by roll call.
I don't think we really need a roll call since we're all present in the chamber, but I will call the roll.
I think the motion might be more appropriately phrased, that the committee recommend final passage to the full Board of Aldermen.
Right.
I amend my motion accordingly. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And being new, as we get back, corporate counsel, this does not have to be by roll call, correct?
You have no one participating by Zoom.
Thank you.
No member of the committee.
So I withdraw my request that it be by roll call.
Thank you. Inch by inch, we're getting back to whatever normalcy is. Outstanding. All right. Any discussion on the motion, a final passage by Alderman Jettie? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Alderman Tenza.
No, there's no roll.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, thank you. Man, you get into the habit. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Unfinished business, there is none. New business resolutions. Before us this evening is R-21-147, authorizing the conveyance of discontinued portions of Old Groton Road. I would like to make a motion to amend by replacing the resolution of R-21-147 with the new language in the legislation and deed provided by Attorney Leonard and their email forwarded this afternoon by roll call. And, excuse me while the clerk catches up. The clerk is back. As many of you, if you looked at your packets in your email and on the desk, there was a question which Attorney Westgate did mention in his presentation this evening on the sidewalks. It was thought that that was covered within the planning board, but just to make sure and to bring it into it, that the sidewalks have been mentioned, and that's what Attorney Leonard is talking about, and this will just make it better. So it seems that Attorney Westgate is in favor of this and with his principles, and seeing that, is there any further question on the amendment to Resolution R-21-147?
So you asked by roll call, do we need a roll call?
No. No.
So,
No. Any discussion on a motion? Okay, seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5 yeas, 0 nays. Therefore, a motion by Alderman O'Brien to recommend final passage as amended by, recommend final passage as amended. It does say roll call on my paper, so please bear with me. Any discussion on the recommendation of final passage? Alderman Lopez.
We made the amendment, we're all understanding that, but, I mean, for the final passage, I would say for recommendation, I don't have an objection to roll calling.
Could you repeat?
We made the amendment, and we're all in agreement that there was no objection, but for final passage, if roll call is, I see no problem with it, like, it's not gonna cause harm.
If you're requesting a roll call, the chair will call a roll call.
I am supporting the chair. If he accidentally says roll call, we don't have to call him
Oh.
every time. We could.
Oh, thank
probably
you.
just-
I much appreciate it. We're getting used to the typical, so bear with me. Do you want a roll call, Alderman Lopez, though?
I'm indifferent.
I'll call a roll call. I'm so used to it. Okay. Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes. We have, 4 yeas, 0 nays. Motion carries as amended. Also before us this evening is R-21-148, authorizing the acquisition of a portion of property at 44 Buck Meadow Road, tax map C, lot 25. Do I have a motion? Seeing none, I will make the motion to recommend final passage. Bear with the clerk. Thank you. Clerk is back. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Yes, Alderman Tenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as I understand it, this is another portion of land that the city needs to acquire in order to fully complete the middle school project over on Buck Meadow Road, just so that's clear for anyone who's
You are
watching.
correct, and I wish that Alderman Dowd, who was the principal that worked very hard in his position of the Joint Special Committee, to work with all the principals involved. And as with good things, it seems an agreement has been made, and this will enhance and allow us to go forward with that particular project. Further question?
And just to further put on the record and clarify, my understanding is that the money has already been allocated for this land, so there's no additional funds that need to be.
I'd be wrong if I say so, but I think that would be a question better to research with Alderman Dowd, but I think that has been part of his work with the Joint Special Commission Committee on that. I'll refer to corporate counsel though.
The money's available in the bond account for the
Okay.
project, and it's a reasonably small amount.
Thank you.
Yeah. Alderman Lopez.
So just commenting, and Corporation Counsel can correct if I get any of this wrong. The public hearing for this is July 1st. What we would be voting on tonight is to recommend it to a Board of Aldermen meeting, which takes place after that public hearing. So we're not in any way ignoring public comment to it. As aldermen, we've presumably all read the literature that we were given to make a decision with. The public did have an opportunity to comment here at this meeting, but it's always possible that someone was waiting for the public comment hearing for it. But I'm in favor of it because I think we can recommend it. And then if something that we didn't think of does come up at public comment, we still have the opportunity at the Board of Aldermen to address that.
If I may.
Yes,
Yeah,
Attorney Bowman.
That's essentially accurate, but not technically. So we're sort of proceeding on two separate but parallel tracks to acquire this small parcel. The one track is approaching the current owners and seeing if we can negotiate an accommodation which will allow them to have access to their remaining property and not harm any development potential that their remaining property may have, and do everything by agreement. The public hearing that was referenced is pursuant to a layout of street proceeding, and that is by which the alderman recognized the need for a public street, determine where it will go, and that sets the stage for an acquisition of that area necessary for the street by an eminent domain proceeding. At this stage of the game, it looks like that route is not going to be necessary. I'm using route in terms of the process for acquiring property, not the actual physical location of the roadway. So it looks like we have reached a tentative agreement, and we will be acquiring the needed property by agreement, not by the layout and eminent domain process. But when we have it all buttoned up and know for sure, we'll make everyone aware of that. So this is separate from the public hearing process, which is involved with the street layout. But it's good that we keep that process alive just in case.
Yes, Alderman Lopez.
Then that's better for me because I think the person who owns the property would be the most relevant public comment. So if we're moving in a friendly manner and there's agreement for this, then we still retain the ability to listen to public if they have legitimate concerns or something comes up. But if what you're saying is true, we probably wouldn't need to go down that route or anything. We're kind of just keeping all of our cards in our hand.
Further comment? Seeing none, clerk will call the roll. Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
And Alderman O'Brien says yes. 4 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries. And brings us to new business ordinances. Before us this evening is O-21-064, authorizing a police parking space on Ash Street. Do you have a motion, Alderman Lopez?
Yes, I'd like to move to recommend final passage, and I'd like to speak to it.
You are recognized, thank you.
So Ash Street is a tricky street because connecting Central Street and West Hollis, a lot of people will go down Central Street and try to cut down Ash Street between that segment in order to get to West Hollis and avoid a couple of lights, most famously the one down by City Hall. So there's a lot of streets in the tree streets that have basically turned into roadways for many because of the one-way street layouts that are present for them. That section of Ash Street particularly has the POW Center on it, and it has the futsal court across the street from it, and it has the Ash Street Skate Park. So there's a lot of back and forth traffic with children crossing the street. In the past, we've discussed with DPW multiple times the idea of putting a crosswalk or any kind of like bump out or something along those lines, and either it's cost prohibitive, the street is too narrow, or they don't want to put a crosswalk in the middle of the street because people might look at the crosswalk and then stop driving. So with various reasons being given to us by traffic, this would function as, if nothing else, a traffic calming mechanism, because having a police car parked in front of the POW Center will kind of alert people driving through to slow down, and it'll create a reserved space that allows kids to more safely cross when the police are not there. Additionally, National POW's mission is to foster positive interaction between youth and police officers. So making sure that the police department is able to park on the street when they visit is a good thing. They don't have to leave their cruisers around the corner so they can play basketball or stop in or do any of their business. So National POW approaches me with this request in the interests of both the traffic calming and building more accessibly for the National Police in using the site. Now, in the past, National PD had a driveway, which has basically been, it's been converted to expand the basketball court. And this will, as a third point, allow police to pull in and pull out without necessarily having to try to pull into the basketball court. So it makes the whole area a lot safer. It supports the partnership between National POW and the police. It provides some helpful on-street presence for police in that particular busy neighborhood street. And I ask the board to support it.
Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Any questions by members of the board? The chair does have one. Alderman Lopez, forgive me. Who will enforce this? Will the police department enforce this?
If the police are,
It's supposed to be a joke, it's police.
yeah, exactly.
Man,
I
you
would
fell into
encourage
that.
the public not to park in the police department's reserved space. I don't know what will happen. It would probably be a lot of paperwork.
Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Seeing no other further comment from members of the board, clerk will call the roll. Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes. Motion passes 4-0. Motion carries. We have items tabled. Nobody brought forward to take items off the table. At this particular time, we'll go back to follow the traditional agenda. And at this time, I would like to recognize, again, reintroduce Mr. Tim Cummings, Economic Development Director, and I see Julie Chismith is also with us from the city, and so I will turn the meeting over to Director Cummings, and can you give me the high sign when you want the, you want it now?
No, not right now, sir. Thank you.
Okay, all right then.
With that being said, again, for the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development, and joining me, albeit virtually, is Julie Chismith, the city's long-term transportation planner. And we are here this evening seeking to have a public discussion as to whether there's an appetite to continue with the narrowing of Main Street in a substantially similar fashion as to what we've been doing over the last couple of years. And believe it or not, we are needing to plan now for next year. So we wanted to get some feedback as to whether we should be looking to plan for such an event. So we are about to, and the reasons why, to be clear, is we are needing to plan for potential infrastructure changes that we're going to need to make, financial analysis to see what type of financial commitment we need to make, giving policy direction to various types of consultants. particularly the parking consultant that we have retained that would be doing the parking study that we have looking to start this summer, and has been asking us how they should be looking at Main Street. I'm being told that the mic was off or not working well, so hopefully that's better.
Yeah, just to remind you, they seem to be directional, so you gotta be right on cue.
Understood, thank you. So with that being said, Julie Shizmitz is on the computer virtually here, and she has a quick PowerPoint presentation. I would like to yield the floor to her to quickly go through with the PowerPoint and then continue the conversation. I believe she should be able to just start if she has shared screen capability.
Okay. I am now gonna turn the, oh, there it is. All right.
I do.
Well, I wanted to press a button. All right.
Sorry, I can turn it off and we can do this over.
Oh, no, you're good.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction, Tim, and thank you to the committee for your time and attention this evening. As Tim said, my name is Julie Chismis. I am the Transportation and Long Range Planner in the Community Development Division, and I just want to quickly share a little info that I hope will help with tonight's discussion on the future of Main Street. There we go. As we are all well aware, in May 2020, things went crazy and the city applied a little tactical urbanism to support its local Main Street businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic by narrowing Main Street to provide space in the public realm for the dining that was not allowed indoors. The image with the barriers that you see, May 20th, 2020, is from last year. So the amazing artwork that was applied this year isn't visible in the image, but the bottom border of my slide shows the barriers by Michael Timothy's and just the great artwork. And you can also see the temporary bike lane delineators that are up. The quick installation of the barriers last year was a group effort led by the mayor and economic development, and it was supported by DPW, the Board of Public Works, the Board of Aldermen, and the business and restaurant community. Online maps developed by DPW were used to design and communicate restaurant seating and barrier locations, handicap and public parking areas, and curbside pickup locations that became so important for the takeout business that kept many restaurants afloat. The city is currently updating its master plan through an effort branded Imagine Nashua and proposes a future Main Street scenario that builds on the current tested layout. It also reflects strong public support for a walkable, bikeable downtown that is a destination rather than a pass-through. And it includes protected bike lanes, extended seating areas for dining, on-street parking, and quality infill development like the PAC. The vision is to have a vibrant, active, multimodal Main Street. And this is not a new concept. The 2000 master plan called for improvements to Main Street to better accommodate bicycle travel. And Main Street was the #1 priority when it came to improving pedestrian facilities. As such, the city invested heavily in its downtown through the 2012 Main Street Sidewalk Project, which included benches, bike racks, safer pedestrian crossings, street trees and art installations, improved lighting, and expanded sidewalks. Going back even farther, beginning in 2008, bike racks have been installed on NTS buses and all of the current buses have them. There are also plenty of people who ride their bike to the bus station, but unfortunately, there are no bike lanes to or from the transit center or along many of the bus routes, making the first and last mile of their trip quite challenging. In 2018, the city saw its first bike share program with 200 dockless bikes arriving just in time for summer. And the following year, we were the first in New Hampshire to have electric scooters. Due to the pandemic, we didn't have them last year, but Bird brought them back on May 20th. And so far, there have been over 4,000 rides taken covering over 6,400 miles. And heat maps show that Main Street is definitely one of the most popular places to ride. And in 2019, the city applied for a federal grant to implement countermeasures proven to improve safety for pedestrians. The intent of the project is to calm traffic and make our crossings safer for the many pedestrians in the downtown area. And I can certainly tell you from my own personal experience, many drivers ignore pedestrians in the mid-block crossings. I have may have vocalized my displeasure several times. And just we did hear that we got the grant last month. We're super excited. And I'm just giving you all this backstory to let you know that we've been trying to make some of these changes that we saw due to COVID but we were looking at these changes before the pandemic. I'm a big fan of our trail system, and I just want to point out that we do have a very impressive network of trails, and soon to be even made even more impressive by the completion of the Heritage Rail Trail East and the Nashua Riverwalk. Bike lanes on Main Street would really make a great connection between the Riverwalk and the rail trail. You can kind of see we've got a big blank space there. Be great to fill in with the bike lane. I would be remiss if I didn't mention traffic. So while volumes were definitely impacted by COVID, there was actually a downward trend over the last few years to begin with. That exception that you can see on the chart is the Main Street Bridge, which had been trending downward since 2014, but has picked back up. We do hear about congestion, and this summer's pack construction and related utility work, along with all the other construction season projects, certainly hasn't helped. The 2020 counts you see were collected by the Nashua Regional Planning Commission, and they will be collecting them again this year and also documenting queue lengths and light cycles to capture the level of congestion. The 2021 counts you see are from our Main Street traffic monitoring cameras at West Hollis Street and Water Street, and a third camera will be installed next month at East and West Pearl Street at that intersection. And so I just want to wrap it up with a few pictures I took last week, actually, before I turn this back over to Tim. Pretty much every time I walk down Main Street, I see lots of people walking and bicyclists using the temporary bike lanes that were put up this year. A walkable, bikeable community is one of the most frequent comments I have heard in my many years of transportation planning in the Nashua region, which began in 2009. The impacts of the configuration changes will continue to be monitored. In addition to the NRPC's data collection efforts and new traffic monitoring camera at the Pearls, a summer intern named Alex Chen has been hired by the Downtown Improvement Committee. Alex, who's a Nashua resident attending UMass Lowell, will be walking Main Street for about 40 hours a week over a 12-week period on Tuesdays through Saturdays from noon to 8 p.m. He'll be observing traffic conditions, the economic impact of outdoor dining, parking, bike lane and sidewalk use, and will just be an overall ambassador to help facilitate a good experience for the many people using the downtown. I just showed this of parked bikes of people enjoying dining. This was last week, and the bike rack that you see there was actually purchased through that 2012 Main Street Sidewalk project. I believe they weren't installed until about 2015 though. And scooter rider taking advantage of the bike lane here. I couldn't get out fast enough to actually show on the scooter, but take my word for it, she's on it. So I leave you with just a couple of questions to consider. Do we want to continue the extended outdoor dining program on Main Street? Is what it looks like today what we want for the future? And is this community ready to take on the infrastructure project needed to make this permanent? And if it's okay, I'll stop my share so we can all see each other again.
Thank you, Julie. Mr. Chair, if you could put the screen on clerk view.
Done.
Okay, thank you. And I asked for that so I could bring up the GIS here. So if there's a discussion, we could narrow in on certain areas. With that being said, and Julie, thank you so much for that presentation. I wanted to open it up for an informal conversation with the Committee on Infrastructure to hopefully get some guidance as to whether we have an appetite to continue with this exercise for the following years. I sent along in advance of tonight's meeting an article that was recently put out by the Boston Globe that showed that the region responded with, overwhelmingly like 80-ish% of folks surveyed expressed a positive interest in seeing more pedestrian-friendly type of accommodations and willing to trade off some of the capacity that the roadways have always had traditionally for automobiles for this type of experience. I think it also is reflective of the Nashua community, as mentioned earlier by Executive Director Paul Shea. His organization conducted a survey and they got the same type of response, with about 80% of the public who participated, expressing an interest of seeing the Main Street in a more narrowed fashion like what we have. And I'm here today seeking guidance and input. I would like to know how we should plan on Main Street for the coming years. So with that being said, I have some concerns that I would want to share. One is we can't keep redesigning Main Street every year, so what is out there as of today needs to stay substantially similar if we are going to continue it, because the engineering department and the economic development office have discussed regularly that it is unsustainable to keep redesigning Main Street year over year. So we have to have some sort of consensus as to what that design would be. And then two, once we agree, or if we agree, I should say, that we want to do this, understanding that this is a somewhat temporary measure. Julie Shizmas used a term that is often used called tactical urbanism. That is a short-term type measure and is semi-permanent. So we could do this for another 3 to 5 years. But really the conversation will be is, for the long-term infrastructure investments that are going to be made to permanently induce this type of change. And we don't have cost estimates to that just yet. But it's, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't point out that this would be something that we would be potentially obligating ourselves to, and folks need to be aware of that. And then I'll just round out my comments by saying, relative to complaints, just like last year when it was first introduced, for the first couple of weeks, we heard complaints of the congestion, which did increase. But then as time went on last summer during the warmer months, it worked itself out. We're seeing a similar pattern right now. We heard some complaints early on, but more so the complaints we hear are more about noise level and quality of life that people have when they're using the downtown, and not so much the traffic congestion, which we need to recognize that we are taking away capacity from the automobile and shifting it, and that's the terms we use in planning. It's mode shift, to try to recognize other non-automobile type of movements, so bicycles and pedestrians and electric scooters and the alike, to give them an opportunity to safely use the roadway. So I will leave my comments there, but I'd like to open it up for a conversation, if I could, Mr. Chair, to get a sense of the committee to see where we should take this in the future.
Thank you. Alderman Lopez, if you can just yield to the chair just for a second. Thank you, Director Cummings. But to help focus on the discussion, if I may, Director Cummings, are you, I'm concerned when we start with when we're talking about this, would any of these changes, if we went to a permanent stature, affect the winter needs? Or is this what the discussion is going to be, just along temporary what we have existing? Or are we going to have something long-term where we're going to have to look at the snow removal issue and everything else? So can you direct us on what we're focusing on with that?
So it would be my recommendation, if we were going to continue this, is to do something similar to what we're doing now, again, only for the warm months. So we would essentially have the legislation that's in place right now, and we would just substitute the dates and make it for, I think it's March 15th of 2022 to November 15th of 2022. That we could continue doing that for a couple years, for a while. That way we are not impacting snow removal operations. And we would remove the barriers during the winter time. However, at some point, this community is going to need to decide whether they want to make a permanent type of change in the infrastructure. And that when that time comes, you'd be changing Main Street for the entire year, because you would be looking to lay out the curb differently than what it currently is.
Okay. Very good. The chair recognizes Alderman Lopez.
So one of the driving factors of this, I guess, sorry about the pun, is the bike traffic coming into downtown and the viability of people being able to use that as a transportation mechanism. So I just wanted to comment, and I think Director Chisma, I'm not sure, is your title director?
Planner.
Planner Chisma, okay. She can-
No, just Julie.
The bike lanes, I'm putting them in quotes because they're sort of spiritual in nature, along South Main Street between Riviera and Globe Plaza, share the same one lane on Main Street. So while they're technically there as feeders to the downtown area, not many cyclists will use them with any kind of confidence. And the sidewalks there are the older, more narrow ones, so you really can't get away with ducking onto the sidewalk on a bicycle. So we should look at the streets feeding down to downtown as part of this strategy, because if the dining is the only focus, that's a point. But if we're also talking about making it bikeable and using alternate modes of transportation, we should make sure that people can get there. I also want to observe that the transportation center downtown is basically bookended by city property and city projects at the moment. So there is the bike path, which is adjacent to it, and the only reason there isn't something connecting the bus station directly to it is because we haven't done that at City Hall. We could be looking at how we can amend our own property. And then there's a pretty good bike lane over on West Pearl, but we are doing construction right now through Garden Street, which bicyclists do typically use as a cut through. So we could look at improving access to from the bus station to the surrounding areas in-house, just by doing things like curb cuts, completing the usage of the alleyway that is really actually Garden Street, and then looking at City Hall property. And I think those are things that we should at least be doing in the background if we're gonna start looking at reshaping Main Street, because just the dining, the outdoor dining is a great crowd builder and capacity builder, and it's a great benefit to the restaurants. But at the same time, it was done for a specific reason to help them build their economic activity and their success. We are basically ceding city land for them to utilize at the expense of another amenity, which is the parking. So we should consider this, or anything we're doing downtown, as more than just expanding outdoor dining. It should be part of the transportation plan. If we do decide to focus just on the outdoor dining and do it in a temporary measure moving forward, I would recommend we actually survey the restaurants for when they will use it, because it seems like starting it on March 15th, we had one restaurant who went with that. Nobody else used it, and really they were empty until probably at least early May. And they're not necessarily going to be used in future years as the weather gets colder. So we can't really, I think if we're gonna plan on having them set up and take down, we should plan for future years to be on a timeline that has some sort of data behind it for restaurant or diners using it. I realize that it was impossible to have last year because we'd never done it before. And this year, we've still only got 1 year as a model, but we should be looking at amending the dates if we do it with the barriers in the future, based on use rather than just time of year.
Yes, Director Cummings.
Thank you. I agree with a lot of what Alderman Lopez just said, and yes, we should look at the dates for usage. And I agree that the usage really didn't pick up until mid or end of April. Starting it back in mid-March was early, but we had some restaurants who actually proactively asked for the opportunity. With that being said, we need to, and again, I agree with Alderman Lopez, start looking at the barriers as being part of a transportation plan. And it is, in the barriers are a means or a strategy to get us to the end result of looking at the Main Street differently. And ultimately, what this really needs to be is a conversation about Main Street acting differently as a roadway itself. And the barriers going out really just act as a traffic calming measure. And whether outdoor dining is part of that conversation or not part of that conversation, what you're really doing is creating more space for the pedestrian realm, and you're trying to create opportunity for non-automobile type traffic to be able to use the roadway. You are slowing the cars down and ultimately trying to have your Main Street act and behave in a different way. And so what Alderman Lopez just said is absolutely true, and I agree with his sentiments. And we just need to recognize that the barriers were a strategy to do that, and one of the externalities of that decision was the outdoor dining.
Alderman Tenza.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Cummings, for being here and bringing up this topic. I think it's a good conversation to have as we think to the future. So I am in favor of extending this beyond this year. I think there is a demand for more outdoor activities in general, and outdoor dining opportunities, as well as other recreational opportunities, with the riverfront redevelopment that we're doing, with the planning in the downtown housing that we are investing in or trying to bring to downtown. I think as we look 5, 10, 15 years down the line, this project is going to serve the whole downtown and the whole city well. I particularly like the idea of, I think you're right, the barriers are great and they get us temporarily to where we need to be now. But if there was a more permanent way to do this by extending the sidewalks, I think it's a conversation we should have going forward. If you think about, I think our downtown is probably most like Concord's in a lot of ways, and it's a very busy street, a lot of traffic, but they're only one lane close to the highway, just like we are for people to get around town other ways if you need to. So I would hope, and I'm sure there are studies. I don't know of any right now off the top of my head, but studies which show that attracting more people on foot to the downtown area is gonna drive economic development. I don't think I look at downtown like a lot of other parts of the city. I think it's always probably growing, it's always probably changing. So even if we make a decision, to expand the sidewalks, that doesn't mean it's forever. If in 50 years the city decides that we need 2 lanes again, we can always go back and tear up the sidewalks and create more vehicals. I think, probably in 50 years we're gonna be flying, so won't even need streets, so we can, maybe we'll just pave the whole thing now, right? And do our future generations a favor. But my one concern is, I think it's great for the dining. I think it's great for some of the more kind of destination retail places. I do worry about the retail shops downtown, and I think we've heard some I don't want to say complaints, but concerns about the shop owners. So I think if there's a way to take their needs into consideration as we plan, I think that would be helpful and really kind of alleviate any of the issues that go along with the expanded dining downtown.
Agreed.
Thanks. Alderman Jettie, and then we'll have you in the queue, Alderman Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think, this is a welcome discussion. I'm a little concerned about, when you ask for direction, which, I'm happy you're asking, and I'm happy to give whatever we can. But I'm concerned about the lack of participation. Like we're only, we don't even have the full committee, and I know you invited the full Board of Aldermen, and, there are only a few of us here. And, I know that, myself, I've just recently crawled out of the COVID cave, and so I haven't had the advantage that you and Julie have of observing Main Street. I've only been there a few times. So before we move forward with great reliance upon what we're telling you tonight, I hope that there are ways that we can get more input from other aldermen and from the public in general. I heard Mr. Shea speak earlier, and I'm assuming he's still on. And I appreciated his sharing, the survey responses that he received. That's quite impressive. But like Alderman Tenzer, and I think Alderman Lopez as well, I've heard, we have to remember that downtown is not just restaurants and bars. There's a vibrant retail sector. And as you know, I've shared with you, complaints that I've received from some of the retail people, and I don't know how, representative they are, but I think they're fairly representative of the retail sector, complaining about, lack of parking for them. I think that, what we've done so far was great. It was a reaction to the pandemic and an emergency situation. It helped a lot, if not all of our restaurants and to get through that period. And I've heard a lot of positive comments from the public about the outdoor dining experience. But I've also heard, complaints, I share these. I don't want our Main Street to look like it looks now forever. It's, these concrete barriers, I don't think are the most attractive looking thing that we can come up with. I noticed some of the, I can think of one illustration or photo or drawing that Julie put up that shows Main Street with outdoor dining and bicycling and people walking. There isn't a barrier in sight, and I hope that once we settle on a permanent plan, that those barriers will be eliminated. I really can envision like right now, before the pandemic, we had 7 lanes on Main Street. And, the 7 lanes are still there. They're just, blocked by barriers. And we extended, we eliminated, 4, pretty much we eliminated 4 travel, or 4 of the lanes to come up with, 2 travel lanes, a turning lane, the rest blocked off by the barriers. I can envision, and to accommodate more outdoor dining, but as the pandemic is hopefully passing us, the restaurants, are able to accommodate people indoors. I don't think they need, as much outdoor dining. So perhaps we could give them, of the 7 lanes, 2 lanes, one lane on each side, and instead of being blocked by barriers, we could just extend the sidewalks, and with curbing and trees and benches and all those things that we did recently, to make it look more attractive. Perhaps we could accommodate a parking lane to accommodate our retail people and to allow people to park nearer, and then, still have 3 traffic lanes, 1 in each direction and a turning lane. That's kind of what I see, kind of as a long-term solution. I know that extending the sidewalks is gonna cost money, so I know, I'm aware of that, and I don't know what that's going to be, but in the long term, I think that's probably something we ought to be aiming toward.
If I may.
Concord, Alderman Tenza mentioned Concord. Concord's downtown is great, but, we have to remember, what's different about Nashua from Concord is that we have a river bisecting Main Street. Concord doesn't. Concord has many parallel routes to Main Street. So a lot of their Main Street traffic can use those parallel routes. We don't have that. We have Main Street, and we have the Broad Street, now the Veterans Memorial Parkway, and we've got the Everett Turnpike. And I suppose people can, and eventually they'll learn that you can go, down, further east and make your way around, over the Bridge Street across onto Canal Street and make your way around that way. But it's not as convenient as like Concord or Manchester. They've got a lot more parallel routes. Manchester, the river parallels their Main Street. And so, it's a practical problem that we have. We can't move the river, and we're trying to take advantage of the river, but it does create that bottleneck across the Main Street Bridge. And, people complain about the congestion. And I'm hoping that people find ways around that they, as has been pointed out by, I think all of you have spoken before me, that Main Street should be a destination and not a thoroughfare of how can you get from one end to the other the fastest way. I think people have to learn to find other ways, or to allow for more time, and in order to make Main Street a more attractive destination, and to allow our downtown businesses to thrive. So I think those are the points I wanted to make. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
And I know Paul Shea, who's on, would like to say
Well,
something.
I was going to say, I would consider Paul Shea germane to this discussion by his position of the Great American Downtown. So if, without objection from board members, I would like to, is that what you're going to ask Director Cummings to?
It was, and then I'd like to say a
And
few words
Alderman Lopez, would you be so gracious to remain in the queue that we can hear from Paul Shea for a brief moment, please?
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Shea, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you very much. So earlier on, I had some comments in the public comment period. I did not want to go over on my time, but I do have an additional data point to share that I did not want to kind of leave tonight without offering to you.
Well, Mr. Shea, Chairman O'Brien, just so that you know, where I am now considering you a participant, so there's no 3 minutes for you.
Oh, God, what
All
did you say
right,
that to?
I appreciate that. It should. I think I got through all of my my feathery language, and I'll cut straight to the point on this run here. But I do appreciate it. So in addition to surveying the public, we did also do a survey of our business contacts We are in touch with about 200 people across 130 businesses downtown, which has been tremendously useful this year in terms of collecting data on impacts as well as getting feedback from the businesses. We did conduct a survey in November of last year after the outdoor dining season started to come to a close. And we had 28 respondents to the survey overall. 9 of them were retail and service locations, and then 19 of them were restaurant locations. Of those that responded, 24 of them were in favor of continuing this beyond the pandemic. 24 of them felt that this was an overall positive for the downtown and its economy. And then when you parse out the data, of the 9 respondents that represented retail and service locations, 6 of them were in favor of continuing this and felt that it was a positive overall. And then 3, which were the 3 from the primary set that were not for it, were again not for of those 9. So you're about 6%.
I think we just killed Paul's internet.
Retail and service being in favor of continuing out there.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. You were breaking up, but I think we all heard, just to confirm, of your support in the continuation of the downtown dining. Would that be correct?
Yeah, and the data points, can you hear me a little better now?
Yes, thank you.
Very good. And so the data point, to kind of reiterate, of 28 respondents, we had 9 that were retail and service locations. Of those 9, 6 were in favor. So you have 66% of retail and service in favor of continuation, and 100% of restaurants in response being in favor. And that's the percentage overall reflects that of the general community. But I think it's important to recognize to what extent businesses and to what extent businesses by sector are in favor of this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shea. Director Cummings.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to follow up on a couple of comments made by Alderman Jettie, and I know Alderman Lopez wants to say a few words, but very quickly, what I heard you describe is more of Alderman Jettie, is more of a permanent solution, is what you'd like to see. And I agree with you. I think the barriers are useful temporarily in a limited capacity. I would want to see Nashua's Main Street stay with barriers in this permanent type condition. It's really, truly a question of whether we have an appetite to take on that long-term, permanent type of infrastructure investments that would be necessary. Ironically, if we can all agree and commit to a plan where we look at keeping the barriers temporary in this type of condition for the next 3 to 5 years, I would suggest we could actually use the CIP process that we have and should use and start the design now, where we would put in an operating budget, maybe next year's, $100,000 or $200,000 to start the engineering design, do that over a 2-3 year period. You'd then have plans designed with actual numbers and figures and costs associated with it that come to year 3, you'd be able to say, we know with some confidence what the cost would be, and we are willing then to authorize a bond of this amount. And then over, again, maybe a 2 to 3 year period, you'd see the construction occur and you'd be able to remove those barriers, maybe not in year 5, but probably by year 6 or 7. in that long-term type of horizon that I just described. But that takes us having that kind of conversation now. And then the other point I wanted to touch upon is relative to the public engagement. And I think Paul Shea had touched upon the outreach efforts that he does and I routinely do, and where we're trying to solicit the input of the downtown and the feedback that we get. But I can't comment as to why we don't have more participation tonight. All I can say is that I put this inquiry out well over 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. I asked people to consider coming this evening. We advertised it and made sure people were well aware of this public conversation that we were looking to have. Because I know inevitably what will occur is someone will say, you made this decision and no one knew about it. And that will probably be, if we decide to do this again, it will probably be the day after we put the barriers out. And that's really unfortunate. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have tonight's conversation, was to try to get ahead of that, because I do think engaging the public is really important. I also think that the public can be engaged in many different ways, and sometimes that isn't necessarily coming to a meeting. And I think we are trying to always, solicit and try to achieve that feedback so we can represent it to you when we bring ideas and comments and thoughts before this body. Lastly, relative to the parking comments and the retailers and the merchants, I guess I would ask, what is enough parking? And I hear from certain industries, there's not enough parking in the downtown, particularly from the retail and the merchants. And then I ask the question, well, what is enough parking? Because what I observe is that there is readily available parking, not only on the side streets, not only in the surface parking lot, but actually in the limited capacity of parking that's offered on Main Street. And we have 3 to 5 spaces dedicated in certain select areas, and I never see all of those spaces ever full. I see 2 out of 3 full, so there's 1 open. I see, 2 out of 4 full, so you have 2 spaces open. But I have yet to actually see a time on Main Street where we are at 100% capacity. Now, I grant you, is the parking convenient? No, not always. Is the parking, what people expect in their mind in terms of having it close to the place that they would like to visit? No, it's not. But that's going to be a cultural shift that people need to understand, that there is readily available parking, and I would submit it's even probably parking that would be closer than if you were to park at a parking lot at the Pheasant Lane Mall. You'd actually walk farther if you parked at a parking lot at the Pheasant Lane Mall, go into the Pheasant Lane Mall, and then go into one of the stores in the Pheasant Lane Mall. You have walked further than any of the parking that we would provide here in the downtown. But be that as it may, it's not line of sight, and I know that's important. So I think we need to continue having these types of conversations, because this year, one of the things we strategically did is we actually tried to increase the amount of parking on side streets. And I think that's something we should continue to look to do. We put more public parking spaces along the Walnut Oval and on Factory Street. And we tried to increase supply of parking where it wasn't provided previously. So it is something that we need to continue to monitor and constantly reevaluate, because it is not a stagnant type solution. It's something that is going to be dynamic, and we need to constantly stay on top of it. So I wanted to say those points, and I thank you for hearing me, and I know Alderman Lopez had a few things he wanted to say.
Yeah, the chair would like to thank Alderman Lopez for his patience. Alderman Lopez, you have the floor.
Sure, thanks. So first, just a reference to the public engagement Director Cummings mentioned. A certain coffee shop owner may have interpreted that as Mayor Donches's personal attempt to end on-street parking. So we might want to correct some of that opinion before she starts a petition. So bringing the question up and asking the question is literally interpreted as a threat to businesses that this is very successful for, they love it, they've invested in it, it's doing really well. So even having this conversation can be interpreted many ways. I'm sure the public knows, as was referenced before, the full board isn't here. We're having a discussion for guidance for Director Cummings to start planning. We're not making any final decisions. I did want to point out, it was mentioned some time ago, the possibility of removing the barriers. The impact of the changes that we made to the East and West Hollis intersection was literally felt by 239 Main Street. Traffic was confused, cars sort of ended up in buildings. When we change things downtown, it confuses drivers and accidents are more likely to happen. I'm definitely looking forward to the cameras being put in there because that's also one of the most historically dangerous accident-prone intersections in the state. So it'll be interesting to see what traffic is doing there and have that live feed of how we can plan around that. But for me, traffic coming in downtown into a narrowing area, not just people who are local who we can kind of suggest other habits to or make it easier for them to take side roads, but people who aren't familiar with Nashua, I don't think we should take the barriers down anytime soon if we're gonna have diners in the area, because any one of them can cause a major catastrophe just by being confused at the wrong moment and not making their play. When we look at the Concord as an example, one of the things that's important to remember is some of the curb cuts they have are like, they're with parking that was integrated into those bump outs that they have. So traffic and parking don't just have to be linear on a street. You can have the bump outs and the traffic calming and the areas for dining integrated with parking spaces that may have a shorter time frame specific to that type of business. So if there's a store or a pharmacy, maybe they have 15-minute parking zones, 2 or 3 spaces that are constantly revolving, versus dining parking where you might have a handicap parking space, or you might have parking that is for 60 minutes so somebody can sit down and eat and do all of their stuff. There's gonna be different needs block to block based on the businesses that are involved. And so when we do look at more permanent changes to downtown, that would be considered. We wouldn't necessarily be looking still as though it's a road being converted. We would be trying to figure out where parking should go and where it's needed. And I'm sure we would have a conversation with the business owners in that area to make sure that if we created a landscape that's ideal for outdoor dining, that they're gonna maintain a restaurant there for at least a couple of years if we put that infrastructure in place. I think all of that comes with planning, and all of that comes with the engineering and the designing. And to get there, as Director Cummings pointed out, we probably still would need to do more of the pop-up tactical urbanism that we're doing, at least for another couple of years, to allow businesses to continue to benefit from it, to allow us to understand how that's gonna impact traffic, and for us to use our downtown a little bit more in a more versatile way than a 7-lane highway. I do think that we should get a bigger sample size. Unlike Alderman Jetty, I am 100% on Main Street because it's my throughway to wherever I'm working, wherever I'm going, all that kind of stuff. Riding my Segway much more often now that I broke my foot than ever before. I'm definitely conscious of what people who are in scooters or who are differently abled are experiencing. And to that point, I do think that we need to consider accessibility issues under our current model. It was brought up, and I guess I want to make a clarification, maybe distancing myself a little bit from what Alderman Jetty had characterized. I haven't heard complaints about downtown primarily, and the vast majority of feedback I've gotten for the outdoor dining or the narrowing of Main Street has been very positive, including people who are pedestrians, people who are walking, people who are on bikes in the downtown area. They find it much more engaging, user-friendly, and I think we need to continue that because not only are we benefiting our businesses, but we're putting in a lot of new residential buildings that are going to increase the population downtown. And if we continue to treat Main Street as though it's drivers only, they're going to use their cars, and they're going to add to the traffic on Main Street, and they're going to use up the parking too. Whereas we have an opportunity to encourage multimodal transportation, use the bike paths and the trails that we have, and better integrate them. And that means that all the new residents from Lofts 34 or the expansion of Bronstein Apartments or the many other housing programs that are going on right now aren't all going to be trying to fight for the same parking space downtown when they only live 2 or 3 blocks away, but there's no way to get there on a bike. So I think we do need to consider the multimodal transportation part, and we do need to consider the residents that are likely to be on foot or using mobility aids. Among the few comments that I've heard, not necessarily directed at me, I know at public comment, Paula Johnson mentioned that handicap spaces were an issue, and the observation was made by somebody near me that you can still park on the street, and it's if you're handicapped, you can still park anywhere. You don't only have to park in handicap spaces. Yes, but there isn't a curb cut. So if you want a wheelchair or somebody in a scooter trying to unload that and move down Main Street, we're going to have an accident. So you can't just consider the parking spaces as all size, one size fits all, and they're ideal for everyone. And that's, I think, where the parking study is going to come in, that some businesses, the objection that they have to narrowing Main Street isn't the narrowing of the Main Street, it's their access to their population. And the objection, I think, from people who might be differently abled isn't to being able to eat on site or without parking that's convenient. It's that they literally can't access it. And there are some unusual obstacles at the moment, involving construction that are in the way. So these are things that there's no simple solution for. I think we should continue to study the issue. I think we should integrate a more complex and holistic observation mechanism into our annual budgets when we have the opportunity and when we're not in the middle of dealing with a budgeting catastrophe. But I do want to be clear, I have heard almost overwhelmingly positive feedback. There's only one business which understandably has a population that needs close-in access that we haven't really been able to accommodate. One wife of a prominent legal figure in Nashua, but most of the feedback that I'm getting from people in Main Street and utilizing it and the restaurants is largely positive. So I think we should continue doing what we're doing. We can tweak what we have and modify the time of year and maybe make minor changes without creating gross changes that are going to confuse the public. And then take a closer look at Concord, I would say, if we are going to keep using them as an example, because they may not have a river cutting across their main street. They definitely have a highway on-ramp, which is essentially the same thing, and it's on a bridge overpass. So they do, in fact, have a large horizontal barrier that isolates their main street in one area. And then on the other side, again, a bridge. They have more multi-directional blocks that feed into them, and that is a strength that they have that we don't. But we could develop or cultivate that strength by encouraging on-street parking on the side streets, because as more traffic goes past those businesses, they're more likely to thrive, develop, invest, and we'll get more activity in our side streets. We'll get that Main Street that is multifaceted that Concord has. So I would say we should look at this much more thoroughly and continue to study it, collect more data, and I would argue that we're in the process of doing that, because Downtown Improvement Committee has an intern who's going to be full-time, eyes on the street, observing things this summer. That's a great opportunity to collect data. Great American Downtown is doing things in a practical manner that helps us collect information. And we are using traffic cameras, and we do have traffic flow studies that we can draw on.
Okay, any other further questions? Okay, Alderman Chetty.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring, I don't know how popular this would be, but it doesn't matter. This is what when you talk about paying for the downtown improvements, the changing of Main Street, and putting money aside for the future, I think it's worth bringing up the idea. I know at one time there was a discussion of trying to create a taxation zone around Main Street where, my memory is that the idea was that that the property owners in Main Street, who I understand who are, not really the restaurant owners and not the store owners, but they're landlords, could be asked to pay more in taxes, but that money would be used for the specific purpose of improving downtown. That was kind of rejected. My memory is that was rejected by them, and that's how we came up with the Downtown Improvement Association, which is paid for by, the parking fees. But, if those, if what we're doing is benefiting the downtown businesses, the restaurants, retail establishments, or whatever, in which, as it benefits them, I'm assuming that it also benefits their landlords, the owners of the property. Maybe, they could come to understand that these types of improvements that we're envisioning, and I think it's a great vision, would benefit them, and that they, may be willing to see that benefit and pay more in their taxes, have their taxes pay more towards the payment of that.
If I may.
Dr.
Mr.
Cummings.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Alderman Jettie. I mean, under your scenario, in theory, then the landlords would be able to charge more rent, and they would be able to recoup that additional expense. In theory, that's how what you are referring to is what's called a business improvement district, a BID. It is a great tool that is used across the United States. Times Square, for instance, Times Square in New York City is a BID. It's how they pay for the New Year's Eve party that's out on the roadway there. But yes, all across the United States have these business improvement districts to make the targeted investments that you're suggesting. I would look at the BID as one tool. I would look at TIF, which we're familiar with, tax increment financing, as another tool. Both are what's referred to as value capture type of instruments that municipalities have at their disposal to try to help mitigate the costs of taking on a project like what we're describing, an infrastructure project for Main Street. I think that these would be conversations, again, as we're looking to design Main Street in this fashion. We would have to have the conversation under the same type of horizon of a 2-3 year timeline with the downtown to assess their appetite and relative to developing a financial plan in that way. And I think it's something we should absolutely do.
Alderman Lopez.
Just to add on to that, and I guess to Director Cummings, does anybody tax the vacant buildings? Because I feel like the businesses that are investing in their business, they benefit downtown. They contribute lively tenants and activity that ultimately is a cooperative and collaborative. There's definitely some businesses that are just totally happy to sit with empty buildings that don't contribute anything, pull down the whole feel, and I mean, in some cases, like, present a risk to the safety of places around them. So I would kind of look at it, or at least consider it a possibility that we could look at, if we're encouraging drivers to look at Main Street differently, we might want to encourage landlords to look at Main Street differently, and not just an asset that you buy and sit on, and then someday when a magical perfect scenario comes up that you're personally inclined to support shows up and wants to remake your building and give you $1 million. Maybe just think of it as you're downtown, you're in a community area, And if you're participating in it, the value is actually participating. Because I feel like some of the businesses that are neglecting their sites, relative to others, or are not investing, could be coached to recognize that if they're not going to do anything, then they're not really
Part of the community.
a partner. Yeah.
I agree with you, Alderman Lopez, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're absolutely right. It's an education, I think, and it takes time and patience. To answer your question, those buildings that you're talking about that are underperforming are taxed. They're not taxed disproportionately. They're taxed at the same mass assessment that any other building of their like nature would be taxed at. But we should try to work with them and incentivize them and try to develop ways that they would, one, want to be part of the community, and two, what would just be good for them and good for the city, which is, improving their assets' performance, which would be a rising tide lifts all boats type of approach. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you, and I think that it takes more education and time and willingness to work with some of these select individuals and try to show them that it's not one for all.
If I could just follow up.
Follow up?
I'm thinking of places that, okay, so we have when we do property tax value assessments, one of the concerns that we've had over the last 2 years is commercial spaces that are not necessarily appreciating in value are shifting the burden over to residential spaces because somebody lives there, somebody maintains it, that continues to add value to the site. A commercial space that isn't necessarily active can not appreciate value and can be reassessed at a lower rate. So it's my impression that some of those commercial spaces are not paying anywhere near the same tax rate that an active, engaged, occupied building might be doing. And that's where I see the opportunity, that if they're benefiting from the difference between having an active and engaged, utilized building versus not, then maybe we should be tapping into that benefit for the community rather than letting them pocket it by inaction.
Okay, Chair does have a couple of questions for you, Director Cummings. But first, I really would like to thank Julie Chismis for giving me new word. I never heard tactical urbanism, and I'm actually going to use it in a sentence tomorrow sometime. So, but looking at that concept, I'm glad it's tactical. Urbanism sounds like a military term. We were at war with COVID. And I go up and down Main Street, and the fact I don't see plywood on the windows is phenomenal.
Except that one place.
We helped the businesses of the community. Will probably never get recognized. Yeah, I'm disappointed too that the place, people aren't here. We all know the old adage, the vocal minority and the silent majority. But the thing is, look at the downtown, it survived. And I think it had a lot to do with what we did. And it shows that I think, even though we might have some distractors to it, but we did prove that we did have something that worked out, that kept our economy. I mean, if Main Street is the postcard for the city of Nashua, we've done our duty with it. But to focus back, and again, thank you, Julie, for tactical urbanism. Director Cummings, I'm going to fire off a couple of questions, so are you ready for the Jeopardy round or whatever it is?
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
Here we go. I do agree, somewhat to entertain the thought of fees for outdoor dining and everything. But when we're dealing with barriers and such, this has to be an all-in or all-out. So even though you might have one person willing to do the proper community thing of joining in and paying the fee, but what about the guy that refuses to pay the fee? Is the case here? In other words, I don't want the traffic pattern in and out of Main Street,
Right.
avoiding barriers.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair, you're absolutely right. It would be a concerning it would be concerning and it would be a public safety issue if we were to have, you know, for lack of a better way of describing it, haphazardly putting out the barriers. You need the barriers to be consistently laid out to be able to safely have the traffic flow. So doing this idea of, you know, well, one, doing it under the idea of just us trying to do it for outdoor dining, we need to move away from that concept. We need to move away from that notion, because it's the idea of it being for outdoor dining, although it's a positive externality that has come about, it's really about shifting the modes of Main Street, narrowing Main Street so it is more pedestrian friendly, and making that conscious decision so you're, you know, culturally you're shifting the way you view your Main Street from being a 7-lane throughway to a destination. And you can't achieve that by putting out barriers in some locations and not in others, because, you know, some people participate in the program and others don't. It has to be more of a holistic approach.
Okay, next question is handicap parking. I think several of us have heard that. According to state RSA, anybody with a placard plate, wherever they park is handicap parking. It's been the tradition of the city of Nashua, of anybody, am I correct? It's been a tradition of the city of Nashua that anybody does with a handicap placard, that the vehicle is properly marked, would not be charged for the parking.
Correct.
So therefore, to get the information out to the public, even though we have a 90-minute or zone, and if a person that is properly placarded does that void the 90 minutes
Yes.
by RSA.
Yes.
So there should not be a handicap issue. It's just maybe we didn't get the proper information out there
Correct.
on the RSA. Well, Director Cummings,
Yeah,
you answered, okay.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Mr. Chairman. I think Alderman Lopez wants to point out something, and I do have a comment.
Alderman Lopez, please.
I would consider the presence of curb cuts, because somebody can save all the money in the world on the parking meter, but they can't actually get onto the sidewalk, or they have to unload in the street.
That is true, but I'm quoting whatever the RSA is, that not everybody that has a handicap placard needs, you know, I understand what you're saying, but I'm sure you know there's people more ambulatory than than somebody, let's say, in a wheelchair. I agree with the, you know, the curb cuts.
I'm just
I
cautious of
understand,
the
you know.
expectation.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, though, there's the sentiment or notion that has been expressed that maybe we're at a loss of handicap parking spaces. And so I just want to be clear, the same amount of handicap parking spaces that we had in 2019, we have right now. And then it was pointed out that, well, there's a couple handicap parking spaces that are quote unquote behind the barriers. And one particular site was referenced, which was in front of the former Alex Shoes of the Future Performing Arts Center. That is true. However, what we also know is we moved that handicap parking space to actually be on the other side of the street. And we did that in a couple locations on Main Street. And so wherever there was a handicap parking spot previously, before the barriers went up, we moved them so that they would be available for usage, so there wouldn't be a net loss of any type of handicap parking on Main Street.
Okay. My next question, it has been brought up, or made aware, this committee, brought up to this committee, has been aware of, in some quarters, of angled parking. Now, as we traverse into the future, we have a parking study. First part of the question is, should we ask our traffic study to look at the current configuration if the outdoor dining is going to continue in the future? And if we continue, since in those areas between the bump outs of the outdoor dining, there is a somewhat of a dead lane where I see people almost using double parking scenarios. It reminds me of good old New York City. But anyways, would it be practical to start looking at an angled parking temporarily in that type of environment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that if we, in theory, if we were to continue with the same type of layout next year, we should look at, in some select space, some spots, I would say we could look at the Bank of America building. We could look at in front of Joanne's Kitchen or what is right there, Why Not? In those two particular areas, trying to bring in, angled parking, where we would be able to potentially increase the supply of parking spaces. It's a question of whether it's safe. Now, I think we've studied it in a very limited capacity here internally, and I think the prevailing thought by our DPW at this time is that we could probably do it during certain hours. However, when the congestion increases during certain periods of time, limited, I think, to like maybe the late afternoons, it might become a public safety issue because you'd have to back the car up into a travel lane. And that could potentially cause a problem. So we're looking at it, we're continuing to study it. I think it needs some further study, but it's absolutely something we could ask the traffic consultants. Which again is the whole reason why I'm here this evening, is to try to get a sense as to whether I should give direction to the traffic and parking consultants this summer as to how we should be looking and treating Main Street. So we could absolutely ask them to look at that issue.
Okay, I do have an additional one. You segued nicely with the certain hours of the angled parking and the traffic lights. And I think we need, would you agree that we need to start looking at our infrastructure on Main Street as far as the traffic lights? Are they of modern to handle peak hours of sequential in their operating systems? I know we're probably talking a lot of money because of the fire department with the emergency warning devices and everything else, and computer. I know we're talking about cameras, an additional camera on Main Street, but are we looking at a traffic block? And I brought this up to you before, but also at the same time too, I suggested, but have yet to see that to remind the good drivers of our community that it is illegal, according to state RSA of motor vehicle laws, to block an intersection.
Right.
So maybe friendly reminders, signs on the mast arms, and would that not help in the peak hours? And it seems if there is a traffic issue, it's because somebody exiting off a side street, being very impatient, and get into a lane with no place to go.
Right, that's right.
Install like a trapdoor.
Yeah, but that's right. That's
So I'd like to put that on your list, And finally, it's the downtown pedestrian crossings. In happier times, if we go back to normalcy here, and let's say the barriers get removed, what I lovingly referred to as the suicide lane as you cross Main Street. You go through, the person sees you on the lane closest to you, but it's that next lane adjacent. I do like the single lanes, at least you only got one car to watch out for. But when we go back to the two lanes, I do admire the challenge of the dodging of the cars. But is there talk to probably looking at all crosswalks that are currently on Main Street to have some form of electronic warning devices that the person can push? And I think, what do we have, 3 crossings and 2?
Yes, to answer
and
your
that could be
question.
part of the study as well?
Yes, to answer, yes, Mr. Chairman. I know internally we are working towards trying to bring more pedestrian crossings, electronic pedestrian crossings to the mid-block for public safety reasons. And so that is currently actually in the works for the reasons you point out.
And then
If
go
I may,
ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
If I may, though, I'd be remiss not to point out, though, the reasons why we're scared about crossing Main Street is because the traffic and the car volumes, the speeds get up to a significantly high rate.
Oh, I concur.
And so the question is do you really want someone to go that fast on Main Street? And so, you know, if we were to bring the speeds down, it then wouldn't be so scary to cross Main Street. And so that ultimately should be, I think, a prevailing thought that helps guide the conversation as to what traffic calming measures can we bring in to reduce speeds. Because that is ultimately going to be the safest strategy for us for helping to people cross Main Street.
I see Alderman Lopez has given deep thought of that, right?
No, I'm triggered. I'm just thinking about the times I tried to cross.
No, but that's it. And if I may, you're talking when we're planning this, it's a 3 to 5 year type of, I mean, the next time we would do some radical changes is, in other words, we should be etched in stone for 5 years from now, or what's your overall view? Where do you want this to go?
Great question, Mr. Chairman. I would recommend that if we could agree as a community for 5 years with this type of treatment, with this type of condition, with the understanding that over the next 5 years, I think to Alderman Jetty's point, we should really have a plan in place to transition into something permanent. And we would have designs in hand, hopefully within year 3 of that 5-year plan. And we would then, by year 3, have confidence to say, this is what we can afford, this is what we can do, and now we should go forward and try to execute on that. And that may take a couple of years. I don't know, depending on the project. That could take 2 or 3 years. But that's the type of scenario I would recommend. But, you know, we're running before we're even walking here. And my question just is really, what I'm hearing from the group, and so I'm gonna kind of ask the question just to make sure I'm not misunderstanding, but I'm hearing consensus that yes, we should continue this next year, and we could have a continued conversation as to whether we want to develop like a 5-year plan.
Well, Director Cummings, as you know, it's the beginning of summer. We just had the solstice yesterday, but we will be shortly coming into fall, removal of the barriers, and election season. So if this committee can depend upon you as you see the need to remind us as a committee to have these particular, can we put you, whatever, well, in other words, I would be entertaining to have you put down as a recommendation when you want to bring this up, to continue this very same discussion and to come up with that 5-year plan, you know, and start something that could legacy. I don't know what's going to happen with the elections, none of us do, but I know I'm still going to be here, whether I'm sitting in this chairman chair, I don't know. But the thing is, as we continue forward, to have some legacy on that, to
Agreed.
To keep this going, it's that important.
And this is the start of a conversation. I wouldn't suggest that we're gonna just have this conversation only and that's it. I'd like to, you know, get this conversation going this evening, which I think we have. Maybe in 6 to 8 weeks, come back to you. We'll continue the conversation in, you know, mid-August type timeframe. We're gonna start the escrow process. I'm gonna suggest to you, just, you know, and I haven't talked to anyone about this, but this is just kind of the way, you know, the rhyme and the rhythm of municipal government. We'll start the escrow process in the August, September-ish type timeframe. If we're gonna continue this again, we would look to set aside some money through that process. Ideally, in the fall type timeframe, we would all be in agreement to whether we just do this X amount of times and have that 5-year plan, and we would have that conversation. Ultimately, try to get some sort of legislation approved, predicated on whatever plan it is that is agreed to as we continue this conversation this summer. And that would be in the fall type timeframe.
And just final observation, do you see a need via social media to get the public involved of an opinion poll as we march forward? I know several aldermen brought that up, but I can see, you know, we are at the will of the populace, and I think a public opinion poll on this would be a grand idea.
Agreed, absolutely, and I think, you know, I would look to some of our partners like Great American Downtown to execute on something like that. But I do think the more feedback we get, the better. I mean, it only helps us make more informed decisions. And again, this is the start of a conversation, not the end of one. And I just wanted to bring it up now because before we know it, it will be the holiday season. And it's just amazing how fast time goes by.
Okay, any other, Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Mr. Chairman, you brought up something about the, the gridlock. It's against the law to occupy the intersection. You're not supposed to go through you're not supposed to enter the intersection unless you have space on the other side to go to. And I've heard complaints about that happening now. And you mentioned the synchronization of the lights and stuff. I know that the Downtown Improvement Committee is going to have an intern observing traffic. So he or she will be able to provide some valuable information. But right now, I'm assuming that those gridlock offenses are enforced by the police department, not parking enforcement, right? Is the police department providing you with the backup you need to look, to watch those intersections, to teach people that they can't continue to block them, by warning people or giving them tickets or whatever it takes? Are we getting downtown coverage by the police department I know they talked about, there were times when they've come downtown trying to deal with the noise of traffic, how that's affecting downtown diners, et cetera. What about this issue? Are you getting help from them?
I would have to check to see what they've done on this front. That I have not received a report back, but that's not to say that they haven't done anything. It's just that piece of data hasn't made its way to me yet. I do know that they have indicated a appetite or a willingness to do some more monitoring in the downtown. I'm just not sure exactly what they've done at this point. So let me check on that and get back to you. Because it is all under the police's purview. It's under the police's jurisdiction.
Yeah. Thank you, Alderman Lopez. I'll recognize you in a second, but to glom on to what Alderman Jettie, can we also explore with the local paper, the Telegraph, and perhaps the Union Leader or other public media devices to remind people of the motor vehicle and, just a timely PSA might help, couldn't hurt.
Yep.
We could change, you're right, we could change the traffic lights. But if they forgot what the book said when they got their license at the age of 16 and they're at age 50 yelling at the person they can't get in, I don't know what all the lights aren't gonna help, but, try to remind people that it is current law. Alderman Lopez.
To Alderman Jettie's question, Chief Kerrigan actually forwarded us a pretty detailed chunk of data on Monday about their activities downtown, their stops, their warnings, the offenses they were pulled over for, and compares that to past years too, so that might have some of the information you're looking for.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other further comments from any members of the board? Outstanding. Director Cummings, I thank you very much for bringing this very important subject before us. And I also would like to thank Julie Chismas for joining us. And hopefully, like you say, I'll be waiting for your call to put you back on the agenda. As always I have said to you, we work together with your department, so infrastructure is always very much interested to have you come on board the meeting. So
Thank you.
if you could put us on the docket, we'll see if we can keep this good thing rolling. Okay, without further ado, we'll move to the next agenda item, general discussion. Outstanding, and at this time, public comment. Mr. Jeff in TV land, I lost my participant screen, and I can't see if there's anybody in the queue that would like to, on Zoom.
There is no one that I can see.
This is disappointing.
Nobody's waiting.
Okay, all right then. All right, thank you, Mr. Jeff, very much appreciated. We'll close the public comment. We're moving on to remarks by Alderman. Alderman Lopez.
The Tree Streets Block Party is going to be on Saturday. The street will be closed from Ash Street, from Central Street to West Hollis, from noon to 5. So the public should be advised of that. Residents should know they can move their cars over to the secret parking lot that we have given you in the mail directly to you that we're not telling the public about, so never mind. But the event should be a really good one. We have good participation from city departments for a Touch a Truck event, so police, fire will be there. Public health is going to be giving out COVID-19 vaccinations for anybody who's a little late to the game. So that's helpful for some. And then there's also going to be a community barbecue, a futsal tournament, and a lot of other good stuff too. So Tree Streets Block Party, you can find it on Facebook if you want information, or just come to that section of Ash Street after 2 p.m. on Saturday.
Okay. Anybody else with comments? I would also like, I forgot to mention, I'd like to thank Paul Shea of the Great American Downtown also for joining us with our guests this evening. Also, it's my own personal mea culpa to members of the committee. Why is Alderman O'Brien chairing and doing the clerk duties? I didn't want, to put anybody in the hot seat to play with all the buttons up here. But I hope you understand that. I didn't want to say like, oh, you got it, and then I was running late to try to give you the quick class. I don't know. But thank you all for your tolerance,
I think you should do chairmanship and clerkship for the rest of the year.
But I thank you, and I thank the people at home for, it's not hard, but there's a new system, and I'm getting used to it, but I think once we will. They did a wonderful job with the chamber and technology here, so, it's very good, and working with the people in the cable TV, it's working out fantastic. So to that regard, so thank you for your tolerance. I don't see a need for no non-public session, so I'm going to turn to Alderman Lopez for an amendment.
Just going to make a motion to adjourn.
That's it, a motion. We have Alderman Lopez with a motion to adjourn. All right. The clerk will call the roll. Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
And Alderman O'Brien votes yes. That's 4 yeas, 0 nays. The motion carries. I'll declare the meeting closed of the Infrastructure Committee at 9:14 p.m. Thank you, everybody who's joined us.